Let's get into prompts and topics. And I know we're going to spend a lot of your time in the tool right now, and this is something that takes practice and experimentation and evaluation. But if you follow some basic guidelines, you're going to generally be successful the first time you go through it. Going back to kind of the early days of prompting LLMs for just a completion, you could prompt it with a single sentence, but you aren't sure what kind of output you're going to get. It could be pretty wide-ranging. So we started to encourage, and this is through trial and error, to organize your prompts in a certain way, right? You come in and you give it a very clear role and persona. You're constraining it, right? That we talked about that. You're giving it a very clear set of instructions. You're organizing it around an instruction grouping, as an example. You're telling it what type of inputs it can expect and what it can do with those. You're telling it what the output should look like in a separate section. And so oftentimes you can see people kind of writing these things as a paragraph, but putting this kind of organization in has really helped drive the LLM towards a better outcome. And the other one that's a big, I'd say a really useful technique is to make sure you provide very good examples. Those examples could be on the type of input and what that format looks like. It could be on the types of output. It could be on the types of logic that you want it to think through. So examples are a very powerful way to instruct the LLM, maybe not instruct it, but to give it, examples of how it should think about it. And it does quite well with those kinds of things. So system prompt is, as we mentioned, that's in every agent. This is the core definition of what that agent does, who it is, what its persona is, what its role is. Following that same kind of approach where you're giving instructions in a section, you're giving output instructions. If you're in your tool, if you get the chance, I know you're going through a lab, but you'll probably find like the supply chain return order. I'm not sure if you guys are doing a lab on that one. But it's a really good prompt to look at. It's very long, but it's a very good prompt. A good structure, good instructions, good examples. And I try to share that one as often as I can because they did a really nice job on that one. And they have a lot of success with that agent. So you're giving it a clear purpose and you're giving it examples. These examples can range from, like I said, this is what your input data looks like. This is what your output format should look like. To here's how I want you to interact with the customer. This is the tone I want you to use. And here's examples of that tone. And there's an example right there. Use polite language. Never share confidential information. That's kind of generic, but you can give it examples like always say please or thank you as an example. Or you're in a corporate environment. Don't use casual terms like, and give it some terms that you don't want it to use. So you can give it the opposite, which are kind of the block words. Don't use this terminology. The difference here really is the topic does the same thing as a prompt. It's instructions. But where the system prompt is kind of given to give the general shape of that agent, the topic can be best used to personalize that or customize that for your environment, for your unique situation. An example of a unique situation might be something like conversational tone. You might be in an organization that likes casual interactions, or you want it to speak in a pirate tone. It will do that, by the way. Or you want it to be very professional. You may want it to also start conversations a certain way or end conversations a certain way, or do follow-up conversations a certain way. So that's an example of conversational type of topics. The value putting that in the topic as opposed to each individual agent is now I can easily spread these across and reshare them across all my agents. I'm not sure if you saw yet. Have you guys used the topic yet in your lab? Add it to your agent network or your agent, and then you insert that topic into the prompt. And for all intents and purposes, that is part of the prompt now. All these things get put together along with the conversational history. This is what happens each turn that gets sent to the LLM. So you use topics like prompts because they are instructions, but when you need that reuse, this is the best time to consider using a topic for that purpose. So we talked about this stuff quite a bit. Really, you're going to get the best behavior if you are very specific in your instructions to the agent. So be concise and specific. This has been trained on human use of language for the last 50, 100 years. They know an LLM knows what a HR representative is. It knows what a sales manager is, at least in the context of the next token that's likely to get generated. So use natural language like that, right? You're describing as colorfully to the LLM, this is who you are, this is what you do, and that's how you start constraining it. And this is all that you do, as an example. So you're defining the abilities. What are the things you expect it to do? You can also use the opposite, which is say you do not do these kinds of things. And that's a good practice sometimes. Depends again on how well it's doing the things that you intend it to do. But that's where we talk about including boundaries. And again, these could make sense in a topic or in the system prompt. It kind of depends again on the reusability or how unique or how specific it is to that agent itself in the system prompt. But telling it what it can't do is really useful. So think about that when you're writing your prompts, not just what it can do, but also what it should not do, and provide those clear boundaries on its scope. Topics, again, I keep coming back to this. They're basically the same thing as a system prompt, but it's really about reuse. So all these apply to both. But one thing you can do in topics also, and we talked a little bit about this idea of critiquing steps as well. You could use topics also to provide very specific step-by-step instructions. Again, you could do this in the system prompt. Especially at the supervisor level, you may want to use a topic that says, hey, if you see these types of tools, interact with them in this way or in this order. Or if I don't get this kind of feedback or output from this agent, then bail out, right? Or try again, because we're not going to get to the next stage. So they use an example here, like if step 1 fails, then don't do the next step. Just provide an error message and bail out or retry. One of the things that we do in the completion space, which applies just equally to agents, is using the metrics that we use to define various success criteria. And an example might be, is the JSON that it generated correct? Or is it malformed? This was a real problem in the early days. It's less of a problem today, but it still is a problem. Or you may find that a new model update does the correct JSON, but it encloses it in 3 ticks on each end, right? Like a Python comment. And you weren't expecting that. So this is where you can get in quickly, provide a topic that says, ignore the 3 ticks and just return the JSON, that kind of thing. So you're going to have to deal with situations like that when you're upgrading LLMs. Somebody asked about that yesterday when set boundaries. Now here we say don't overload with too many details, which can be true. But if there are succinct instructions and they add value to the constraining of that agent capability, then add it. If it's something that feels a little redundant and maybe slightly off from one another, then consider using a single instruction for that. So summarization seems like a pretty simple use case. It can be challenging sometimes. We actually use summarization in the conversation history as well, because we have to. These sessions can get very long with a lot of conversation history. We want to make sure the right elements are maintained in that session history. And so there's a lot of different techniques that are used there. And as we go on, we'll get more and more controls over how we do the summarization. But again, just read through this. This is good stuff on how to summarize, on the output formatting, on the types of instructions that you're providing. And again, giving examples are going to be a great way to get what you want out of it. You guys have already created one. I'm going to just show you the step where you add it. So at the bottom of your prompt window there, you see topics listed. So any topics that are added to your agent at that point or supervisor, you can reference through this selector down here on the bottom of the edit window, and you can select that variable. And it'll insert it wherever your cursor is at. Of course, you can copy it and paste it wherever you'd like. But this is how you inform the system prompt where it should insert that instruction. And I think, like we've been saying a few times, this all just gets turned into one big system prompt ultimately. So this is how you insert those into your system prompt.